Welcome to the Media Roundtable. We're talking to leading voices in podcasts about what they create, why they create it, and the impact that they want to have on the world. So whether you're a member of the media or the marketing community, or you're a podcast listener who just cares about the direction of this country and the messages that you advance, we want you to feel good about what you consume, what you distribute, and what you support. I'm your host, Dan Granger, and today we have two very special guests. We have SuChin and Kulap Vilaysack, who SuChin is the South Korean-born I'm going to do that again. Sorry about that.
That's all right. Dan, you're doing great.
I'm going to be honest. I got super intimidated that I was going to say your names wrong. I don't do the intros
for my show for that reason. I let Kulap do it. I gotta say, you slid through our names beautifully. It was great.
Well, I did a couple rehearsals and I decided that I'm just going to go really fast.
I do the same thing. I do the same thing. I hate intros. I do it. Dan, sometimes in person, I'm just like, I do it like out of my breath. It's like, you did great.
By the way, that was very gracious. And with your permission, we should not edit this out. Let's just keep rolling.
Yes, of course.
People can hear how gracious you really are on and off.
Well, and how hard it is to do those intros.
Oh, man.
I avoid it at all costs.
All right, let's see how I do with the bio. SuChin is a South Korean-born American television news correspondent and veteran journalist. Now, in 2001, as you may recall, she became the first Asian American news anchor on MTV and is now the co-host of Add to Cart, a very special podcast, alongside Kulap Vilaysack. Kulap is a Laotian American actress, comedian, writer, director, and showrunner. You might have seen her on some things like, I don't know, Parks and Rec, The Office, stuff like that. Each week, SuChin and Kulap meet up to talk about what is moving in and out of their carts. We're all adding to cart all the time, aren't we? What makes a worthwhile investment and how these decisions dictate who we are. Now, I'm going to change that and say reflect who we are, because I imagine it doesn't actually dictate, but who we are dictates what we add to the cart. Is that fair?
Yes, very fair.
Okay. All right. Beautiful. Well, thank you both for being here. We're so excited to have you on the Media Roundtable. Welcome.
Yay. Thank you. Thrilled to be here.
Okay. Now let's go back a little bit. I gave a very cursory bio on both of you, but let's go one at a time. Can you help us understand who you both are individually and what it was that led you both respectively to what has become the team behind Add to Cart? And let's start with you, Kulap.
Sure. I have been in podcasting for about a decade. I was a host for Earwolf's fourth podcast called Who Charted, where I hosted with comedian Howard Kramer. And I hosted that for 7 or 8 years, I believe.
I read 9, but
okay.
To each their own. To each their own. That's what I saw, but could have been misinformation. By the way, let me just interject on that. Earwolf, that's legit. That is OG podcasting. Like, we were there at the beginning when that was like maybe one of the first couple of networks that actually came and started to legitimize the industry. So that's incredible. You were actually at the very, very beginning of the revolution. Yeah. And my gray hairs show it, Dan. I'm with you. If you're watching on YouTube, we can share.
We embrace the gray. We're silver foxes, me and Dan. So I did Who Charted, and then I then took maybe a break for like a year, 2 years. And then I missed it. Podcasting was such, it really helped me find my voice. It's such an intimate medium. People are listening to it as they work, as they travel, as they're cooking. I love the relationship with listeners, and so I was eager to get back into it again. And I love partnership, and I knew I didn't want to just do something by myself. And I thought, Asian American icon, SuChin I think would be a great person to collaborate with.
And how far back do you guys go together?
Our
spirits, our souls and our spirits go
eternal.
Lifetimes, eternal. Yes, we are the eternal twin flame.
Yes,
but,
yes. 3 years now?
I would say closer to 3.
All right, so you were friends before you started the show.
Yes.
Yeah. But we have we were friends, but nothing like checking in with someone every week and going over their credit card statements in graphic and intimate detail.
So you were doing that in real life with no knowledge that like this was a concept for a show. You were just actually doing this.
No.
You were doing
oh my God. No, we're not psychos. But no, I'm saying what I was saying was that now that we're doing this podcast together, where we're doing that on a weekly basis, while we were friends before, this is like a whole different level of marriage. This is actually, there's more honesty here than in my marriage. Let's just put it out on out there.
Yeah. Let's go on record.
Fair enough.
Let's just go right on record and
keep your husband from listening to this.
Husband would agree. No, he would agree.
Dan, you got the exclusive, brother.
Thank you.
You heard it here first.
That's going out on Pod News tomorrow. I can feel it. Thank you.
But yeah, so, while we knew each other, I think the exercise of doing this podcast, and the whole point of the podcast is really like, what are we adding to our carts, the stuff that we're buying, the things that we're obsessed with, and then most importantly, what does it say about who we are? And that part has really cemented our relationship and our friendship. And listeners have been along, for this journey from the very beginning. So I think as we've gotten to know each other better, I think the listeners are hopefully entertained. They're certainly, mortified more when it's my revelations and all of that. I don't know. It just has led to something quite unexpected for us. I think when we were doing this, we thought it would be something fluffy and light. And, the group chats that keep us alive during these tough times are the ones where we are passing sales and coupons to each other. We're recommending toilet bowl cleaners and sneakers. And I thought that it would be that, and it is that, but it has, quickly become so much more than that. It's a reflection of where we are in our lives, where we are in the world. And, in an episode, we can talk about serums, but we can also talk about the AAPI community, and we can talk about, our aging parents. And then we swing right back to serums, and that's just in a 40-minute episode.
It is incredible as I've been getting familiar to hear the range of what you guys cover. Cause like you're talking about some hilarious stuff, and then you're talking about some deep personal stuff, and then you're talking about some serious stuff, like all in the space. I think it's all just very honest. I mean, I think but I of all the podcasts that I know, I don't know if I hear anybody as seamlessly transition from personal to global to thematic as organically as you guys do. I think it really is something special in your honesty and your chemistry.
Thank you so much, Dan. That's nice to hear it reflected back.
Because we're not sure. We're sitting here sometimes. We record an episode, right?
Yeah.
It is. My personality is one of trying to fuse opposites together, and so that like it to me. I feel I personally always knew that it was going to go deeper. I knew to pull SuChin in.
Yeah, I was really hoping it wouldn't, I was really hoping we would skim the surface. But
you want to stay guarded. So if you guys just said so, well, Kulap, you've been in podcasts for, so long that you probably got used to just like gutting yourself into a microphone, whereas
also I did a documentary that was like about my family, and I was like airing my all of our dirty laundry. So I got comfortable in that space.
Yeah. Well, and it's so interesting. You were talking about podcasts and the intimate nature of it. And I think audio is like that. I came out of radio. I did that for 10 years before doing this. But like, one person observed that podcast is maybe the only type of media that you actually put in you. Like you actually put the earbuds inside. Like what media channel do you actually insert the method of consumption into yourself to consume. Very, very different type of relationship with a media channel.
Oh, Dan, I didn't know we were going to go there. That's a reframing. A reframing.
The different,
I don't know if I'm going to come back from that. Yeah.
Well, let me turn it into a serious question. So the question in that is, you both have spanned, all of the different major media types when you're communicating with people. How does this differ? Is this different than what you've done before when you're doing television, whether that's a sitcom or a news channel? Yeah. How is this unique for you guys?
This podcast started November 2020.
Yeah.
And so simply being able to, you were seeing where I record the show every week, which is in my office. I'm not wearing socks. I promise you I'm wearing pants.
Okay.
You have to believe me. But that, no hair, no makeup. We have the loosest of plans. Being a showrunner, all we do is plan and hope for the best. So there's this, the closest thing for me, was doing improv at UCB. This is probably the closest in doing live performance, with the advantage of editing a little bit. If I say too much, I can cut a quarter of them out.
Yeah.
That's a difference for me.
Yeah, they're coming out with software for that too. It's pretty cool.
Ooh.
Oh yeah. No, it's awesome when you hear yourself and you go, wow, I really sound smooth. And you didn't sound smooth when you said it, but it sounds smooth now. Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And how about you?
Yeah. I mean, I think that some of the intimacy of podcasting and audio is there because you don't have that visual distraction.
Yeah.
And you also don't have that, I build my career on being in front of the camera. And so there's a lot of stuff you can do to make up for the fact that you're not saying very much, and with podcasting, I mean, you don't have that corner to hide into. So that's one thing. And I think that forces someone like myself, who I, really pride myself on being very well researched and scripted, and I know my points to hit, and that is not welcome here. It's not encouraged. It's frowned upon.
Not by me.
Frowned upon.
But you mean by the channel, right? Yeah, right. Just the community.
I see.
What I also mean too is that, like, if you're going to do that, I think on a podcast, like, I just don't think there's a lot of success in that. I think that the success of our podcast works, like you said, because it is so honest and in the moment. Like, nothing is scripted. Kulap and I, every week, we bring our things to the table, right? The things that we're adding and removing from cart, but we don't share them with each other. We're doing that in the recording. So even built into the format of the show, we wanted to make sure that there wasn't any scripting, that the moments were as authentic and as honest as we could possibly get them.
Yeah.
And yet, Sue, though, I mean, when you say, and I know you mean this in a different way, but when you're talking about your sleeping hiking socks, you're very well researched. You know exactly what points you want to say about them.
Oh yeah. I mean, that's what I just call like oral arguments. You know what I mean? Like, I'm gonna go in to the courtroom prepared. I don't know what you got prepared. I don't know what the judge is gonna say. I don't know what the jury's gonna say. Yeah. But we do obsess over our things.
Okay, and SuChin, you're somewhat of a classically trained journalist, broadcast journalist, in a sense that you had to, when you came into the field, there were some rules that the whole world followed as a journalist. And I think we've seen in the last few decades, all of that has been blown up. But did you have to like unlearn some of the things that you were trained to like never do? You have to like, now that becomes the new rule to do what you were never supposed to do.
I think that's what I was trying to say was just, I mean, like everything instinctually for me, storytelling, like everything that is instinctual for me that I have learned is doesn't work here. Like when I kind of go, I have to really fight the urge to sort of hide behind, a really buttoned up version of myself at all times, and I think that you're right. Like, I mean, I've said this before, but I remember that first week we recorded, and before the show had even aired, before we had heard ourselves. And I had many conversations with Kulap about the anxiety that I was having, that I wasn't sure if I could do this, that it felt way too personal. I have never, ever opened my life in this way, never imagined that I would share with people, what I'm doing in my sleep and,
shower.
In my shower, and how I don't like to thoroughly wash a pan. All these things feel like alarm bells going off on one hand, and it is scary. But I mean, I think that that's the beauty of also why I'm doing it now in my career. Being 46, I think the nice thing about having had all this time to have this polished version of myself, I feel really comfortable generally being quite honest with the audience and with myself. I don't know. I think it just comes with some age and experience. I don't know. What do you think, Kulap?
Well, SuChin Pak is a trailblazer.
And I have heard this.
And
I've been told this by others.
SuChin Pak, she is not used to being the subject.
That's right. Correct.
And
that's what I wanted to say. Correct.
And
It's
so
yes.
it is hard.
Thank you, Kulap.
She wants to take it back, and she wants to.
I want to
be
edit
the
it out.
interviewee. And she wants. It's like
control.
There's something about like, well, but it's like in this, it's like SuChin is the story.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I'm the story.
That's unfortunate.
But she's the story as well.
So I feel like you've already helped illuminate something that I've been struggling with, because as I'm listening, I'm going, okay, like, I think team dynamics are so interesting. Like, you put two people together, they can't both be the same, right? Like I think I finally understand who's the straight man and who's the foil, right? Like, so SuChin, are you a firstborn?
I am. We both are.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, but Kulap, how many siblings?
Well, that's
in her documentary origin stories as well.
So I didn't see it yet, but obviously I do.
I grew up with two much younger sisters. Like, they're 9 and 11 years younger than I am.
Yeah.
And then from my birth father, there are 4 other siblings, all girls.
Okay, but according to birth order theory, you're effectively an only child as far as the dynamics, right? But it seems like you've got, okay, now I'm starting to get it that one of you is more straight down the middle and the other's a little wilder. And that dynamic, I think, really makes for a fun combination.
Yeah, it does.
That's cool. Okay, so let's talk about, I want to talk about what, like, in more detail, like, what is the show? Because I think it can be, it's always interesting to hear the concept, but like, how does that actually work in real life? Are you adding specific CPG products to cart, or is it anything to cart? And, so if we can get into some samples of the kind of stuff you guys talk about, I'd love to get into that for a little bit. And then we'll talk about the purpose behind why you're doing it.
Sure. So our add to carts, our remove from carts, can absolutely be items we've bought online, items we've bought in store. They also can be ideas or habits, right? In terms of, we have game changers, things that we love. We love, Sue, what's that shampoo we love that you got me into?
Pros and Hair Story.
So we'll talk about that. We'll also talk about
TV shows and movies, and we talk about, you can add to cart. The thing about the cart is that it's this metaphorical cart, the cart that is our lives. So yes, sometimes we're adding nail polish to the cart, but we're also adding, the fact that both of us are at the age where we're dealing with aging parents, and we add our partners to cart, and the sort of the squabbles that we have. So all of those things, I think the beauty of the show is that it kind of can be anything, and so that's, I think, what you're talking about, this balance between just a very, an object that we've bought this week that has changed the game for us. And then something more kind of, theoretical, like it holds all of those things. Like it's the ability and the flexibility is, I think, what makes the show kind of universal, even though it is very specifically from our point of view.
And each item really, at the end of the day, of course, I'm interested in something that SuChin bought, but they're conversation starters.
Right.
Because if I'm in the market, I mean, there's so many things that I could tell you that SuChin has gotten me to buy. SuChin bought me that.
It sounds like a very expensive show to produce. I wonder. Yeah. Somehow a conversation podcast just got very pricey.
But also, Dan, one of the reasons why we did this podcast is so we could get free things. Oh, we should have led with that. We should have led with that.
Yeah.
Number one. Your audience needs to know. Your audience needs to know that we are accepting things at all times, delivered to our door. Yeah.
Yes. And Dan, but I can't tell you that my behavior has changed because of the podcast. I was already at a steady inflow of things.
How many packages a week or a day show up on your doorsteps?
That's tough. The combination of me and my husband, Scott Ackerman, that's tough.
It's
pretty steady. It's pretty steady. Yeah. Especially during the pandemic, it was pretty steady. But I lost my train of thought. So it's a conversation starter.
Yes.
But to me, what is the most interesting, and I think what our advertisers love, especially advertisers whom we really care, products we truly love, and it's an organic endorsement, is that we talk about the why.
Yeah.
And that comes from our lives and from the heart of why. And that can be comical, but it is based on like, this is why I need this. And it may be surface, or maybe like a deeper situation that why it fills some sort of need for me at this time.
Yeah.
And so what are some of the most interesting things that you have added to cart that you feel like are the crowd pleasers, the things that you've gotten the best feedback about?
We had one of our guests, Casey St. Onge, came to us and she introduced us to Dr. Tung's Ionic toothbrush. It is a manual toothbrush, but you you touch the certain pad on the toothbrush. You keep your fingers wet. You touch this pad, and then it makes your teeth, when you brush your teeth, it makes it feel, we say glass teeth, not that your teeth could break like glass, but it's smooth.
Yeah.
And that took, our little corner of the world by storm.
Yeah. I heard you talking about that, and I still am not sure I get it. Also, we work with the Quip electric toothbrush, so I'm a loyalist.
By the way,
we have
Quip.
This is an addition to.
You
can't have too many different types of toothbrushes in our add to cart world.
I agree with that.
That's what has changed in my life since add to cart. I have 3 different toothbrushes that I use depending on how I feel.
That's right. Time of day. You need a different toothbrush depending on your emotion. I strongly believe in that. That's right.
And you don't have like your own online mall yet for all these products yet, do you?
Oh, that would take too much time.
Oh,
too much effort, sir.
Too much effort.
Dan, are you offering?
Maybe I know a guy, but if you Dan, you think about it.
I feel like there's room for another logo behind you. I wonder.
You think so? Can we? It's too.
Oh yeah.
Two's not enough, is it? We
So
need more
much
logos
space.
back
Look
there
at that.
for
Look
sure.
at all that white space
You're really
we could be filling.
If somebody's listening and not watching today, they're going to need to go on to YouTube. We're going to have great YouTube numbers on this. Thank you. No, it's but I could totally see a scenario where, as an extension of the show, you've got affiliate deals with some of these products.
Yeah.
You remember that's how in the early days, that's how all podcasts started getting monetized, right? People give out these Amazon links and go like, make us an affiliate to support the show. And like people did it. And now you've got this whole, like every day your inventory gets larger. If you just set up a bunch of affiliate deals, probably have a nice little ancillary business on top of that. So
And you please tell me, because I feel like isn't it? I'm asking advice. Isn't it better to just to attract advertisers than to like just the pennies here and there from affiliates?
Oh, yes. However, it's a both and. You don't have to choose. I mean, like, look, if you were doing a news show and you know you're just delivering news, like you don't want an online store where you're taking, you know, the fractions. But the fact is, you're out here making recommendations and talking about things that you use and love that nobody's giving you. That's free advertising you're giving away. Your audience trusts you. It's all honest. Like, why can't you have a both and scenario here while we're talking about your business?
All right. Okay, Dan.
Here we go. Here we go.
There it is.
This is, by the way,
why
every
we do
staff
this
meeting.
show.
This is every add to cart.
Is this a staff meeting? Does this count as a staff meeting?
Yes.
Sure does.
Okay.
And then we walk away, and Kulap and I just floats away. We have no idea. Do you know how many, Dan, social media meetings we've had about posting reels and man, we were in there, you know, we got our notebooks, we got our calendars, and we go out with such an enthusiastic.
You're trying to do it yourselves. Like some of these things are, you know, we can't do everything. Like I can't tweet. I keep trying to tweet. But like, I can't do it. If you want me to talk about something for an hour and you're like, hey, here's a topic, now talk for an hour, I'm fine. But if you're like, no, you only get a couple of words to use to say something, I'm paralyzed. I can't do anything.
That's how,
you know, we need help. We need it takes a village, guys.
Yeah, it's true.
It does.
It's true.
It does.
No, I think though, some joking aside, because I don't know what I'm talking about fully, but I think one of the reasons why this concept of add to cart kind of made a lot of sense when we were even thinking about, well, what is the type of podcast we want to do, was the potential for all of this. You know what I mean? That it was a very organic way to share what we love, but also an organic way for us to work with partners that, you know, made a lot of sense and really fit with our audience. So, you know, we could have done it on anything, but this felt like, okay, the potential, the platform, the sort of, the format really lends itself very well to partnerships there's no rub. It is very organic. When we talk about a partner that has supported our show and we're talking about their product, the love is, you know what I mean? It feels
the love is real.
Yes. And we test everything and we try out everything. And so I think that for us, it just was one of those concepts, that idea that felt like, oh, this could be bigger than, you know, a conversation, you know, that it had a lot of sort of legs, if you will. Yeah.
And so, how have you built out your audience as you've been doing this? Because, you know, there's a million of these things, literally. We're all sitting in the library with a million competitors.
Yeah.
How do you get yours to stand out and to attract new listeners?
I think great
cue.
What'd you say?
Great cue, Dan. Great cue.
Really GQ there. I think one of, at least for us, because you're right. I mean, I have, you know, friends and folks that have reached out. I'm sure Kulap, over the years you've done this. They're like, I want to do a podcast. What do I do? Just like, wow. Yeah. I'm going to strongly suggest you don't, but if you must, you know, these are some ideas and tips, but yeah, like you can't just have a great show. Like there are I mean,
that used to work.
Yeah. And the great thing about podcasting is that it is very democratic. If you have, you know, a computer and a phone, you're ready to go, you know, like you can do it. So I think the barrier to entry is so low that it does allow for a lot of different voices. That being said, I think organically one of our biggest ways is because of who we are as Asian American women, because we're active in that space, because we have been active and vocal in that space. I think that lens is something that audiences are really craving. I think it's something that platforms are really kind of leaning into. And I think that partners and advertisers are also seeing that there's a great benefit from having a diversity of voices. As many podcasts as there are in the top 100, how many of those are going to be from female, from people of color? These kinds of natural things to, who we are as people, I think has helped us reach a larger audience, but it's also helped us really tap into the audience that has always supported us, in everything that we do. I think that, both Kulap and I met doing work for the AAPI community. So it's so intrinsic to who we are as people and our professional work that, number one, I think it has tapped into an audience that has followed us and, in almost everything that we do and supported us. And then it's helped us to really differentiate, like, well, what does this podcast sound like that's different than other shopping podcasts or other, sort of conversational, comedy podcasts. So it's not anything that can be planned or, I just think that kind of was something that we didn't see maybe as such a big asset, but turned out to be a great marketing asset. And so we've been spotlighted on Apple, and we've been on, lists for New York Magazine and on, Spotify, all of these places. And people are like, oh my God, like you just started this. How are you getting this attention? And I think that people are hungry for different points of view, and for a very specific point of view that feels that there is a universal message in that, even though that we are very specifically coming from our own point of view,
Well, so while we're on the, sorry, please go ahead.
Well, Dan, I was in just a practical tip would be to guest on other podcasts.
Yes.
Yeah. And to introduce yourself and your podcast to their audiences.
Yeah. Well, that's what Kulap has, brought to this. She's been doing this for so long, so she has such a strong podcast friends community, and we have certainly tapped into that. And so, that's from just her years of experience and her community too. So that's really helped.
And everybody wants the unique and glory that is SuChin Pak to guest on their podcast. So it really is just a winning combination.
Indeed. So while we're on the very serious conversation, so you've both been in media for, long time, decades. Okay. And in the time that you have been professionally engaged in media, how has your experience changed as an Asian American woman?
I started mainly as an actress, and the roles, especially in the beginning, were for very your video vixens, your adorable sluts, it was a very specific sort of what I was booking and what I especially at the beginning was kind of in that line, and even doing The Office. And the Office, I'm in the third season, I'm in the Benihana episode, and that started my career, and I had an amazing, wonderful experience. That episode could not be made today.
It's unbelievable if you watch content that was made 5 to 10 years ago.
I wouldn't even go that far back.
Yeah.
And a co-star of mine last year brought this up and talked about her experience, and her experience I totally support and get. And while just how these multiple truths can happen. Yeah. And of course, the difference between when I moved on to creating my own show and becoming a showrunner, there is 100% and way more control.
Yeah.
And I moved from, as an Asian woman, you know, from being an object to being the subject, a lot of the times because of my own doing, because I did a documentary about my family, but in my mind, that's also what happened too.
Mm-hmm.
And that's also have to do with age and longevity.
When you're getting cast in something today, does the industry work in such a way that they are still casting an Asian woman, or are we getting to a place where they're casting for a woman and whether you're Asian is immaterial?
No.
Are we anywhere near that? No,
that I know of.
Not even.
I'm not
close.
An actress,
That
but
I mean, you know, I just read Priyanka Chopra in Vanity Fair last month, and her big that Quantico show. Yeah. She wasn't meant to be Indian. And then they, when she booked it, then her story kind of, so that's that's like one of the handful of stories like that.
Yeah.
But I mean, she was, quite famous, even.
Huh?
Huge star, 6 million, probably. Yeah. Okay. Huge star.
I mean, yeah, but generally, no, I don't think so. I mean, I think that when we're talking about like strides in that very specific question, which is a great question, because it gets sort of like very much to the heart of the matter, which is that we can hear a lot of chatter about, strides that have been made, but for the day-to-day, the business of it, that's, the buck stops there, which is if they're looking for an Asian American woman or an Asian woman, they're going to say they're looking for that. And I think it can be reversed, in terms of like, oh, we weren't considering an Asian woman or an Asian person for this, but I think that's pretty rare. Yeah.
And the timing, well, actually, let me go to you, SuChin. Can you talk about your experience more so because you were coming from a different type of media?
Yeah, I think, when I was starting out in news, I was very much a product of the Connie Chung effect. Every local news station had a white male anchor and an Asian female co-anchor. You know what I mean? Wow. Like that was the slot that felt acceptable and, at the time, and what a great career that, to shoot for that. I didn't have that option, I think, before someone like Connie Chung came to do the news. And so I had been pursuing that my whole life. And I had got to a point where I just realized, oh shit, this is not what I want to do. Like, this isn't the life that I see for myself. And so I veered from that path, but I think that in some ways it opened the door, right? But in some ways it really kind of hemmed me into a certain version of myself that I could put out there. And something like this podcast is what I'm talking about, is that can we as Asian women, can I as an Asian female journalist tell stories that feel rage and anger and sadness, and can I criticize and still have a seat at the table? Like, if I, you know what I mean? Whereas before I felt like if I did those things, if I quote unquote misbehaved, that this ticket that I got, right, this Willy Wonka ticket of being on air could be taken away, And so best to just sort of stick to the script that they all thought was appropriate and proper for someone who looked like me. And, this medium and the digital world in general kind of allowed me to deviate from that, as soon as, I hate to say it, as soon as Twitter and social media came, the whole news world changed. Like live news was dead, like I was like, what is my career then? And so that obviously has evolved into, so much more and will continue to evolve. And I think in some ways, while it is the bane of my existence, it has also allowed me to be a lot more freer with the types of projects I get to take on and the voice that I can take on, which is more fully formed, not just a version of myself that somebody else had formed, before.
Well, and things got maybe exponentially more complex with the start of the pandemic. And I have no idea what that's been like from your perspective, but I'd love to hear it. And the fact that this was born in 2020, is kind of incredible. So Can you talk a little bit about how the world has changed for you in the last 2 years? That might be different than how everybody's life changed in the last 2 years.
Yeah. Well, we'll start with how we were all of us table setting here that there was concurrent crises happening. Crises, I think.
Crassus? Definitely crassus. Yeah.
Yes. We fell through many types of crevices. And so while the pandemic's happening, former President Trump kept saying the China virus, and things which then it seemed like racism, all the subtly fell off, and the rise in Asian American violence and hate, especially just being home alone and in our houses and see videos of our most vulnerable in our community, our elders, be harassed and injured and killed, shook me, shook SuChin to our core. The Atlanta shootings, we're about to, this month, it's gonna be a 1-year anniversary of the death of these Asian American women in Atlanta who were working at a spa. It kicked up a lot of old stuff for me personally. It reminded just old pain that I had pushed down and I had moved on from. It kicked all that up for me. And I'll let SuChin speak, but I the way that I walk around and have been walking around in the world is different now than it was prior to the pandemic, because I feel that I need to be more vigilant, and that harm is not only a possibility but quite likely.
So, and forgive me because I'm speaking out of total ignorance. This is a topic that I know next to nothing about. But but we know that there's been racism is not new, and against the Asian community not new. But are you saying that the instances of violence jumped significantly, or was it always there and we just didn't talk about it?
No, like it by hundreds of percents.
By
like
hundreds of percent.
Like 300%. Yeah,
Okay.
in some cities.
When a president essentially endorses it really gives
it empowers
permission.
people.
It empowers people.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. And so in your experience, did that make it more motivating or more frightening to launch a show as you did and just kind of come out and say, here we are? You know, how did that change your interest in putting yourself out there as public figures?
I don't know. I could just say that these are things that are happening to us.
Yeah.
And so we're just talking it, but we have a microphone to talk about it.
Yeah.
To me, it's not, it wasn't, certainly when we started, we didn't plan it.
Sure.
We didn't.
No, but I just wonder if you're seeing that happening in the middle of all the chaos of the pandemic, and you're going to launch something new, and knowing that, you know, this was going to be a topic that was going to be relevant when you're both doing it together. If everything that was happening around you, if that became an inspiration for you, or was something that made you say like, why even, I just want to hide. I don't want to, you know, be exposed to anybody right now.
Yeah. And I think that, but it's all of those things.
Yeah.
And every week is different, right? You know, and you're right. I mean, I think that, you know, we sit there in front of the microphone every week and we just, you know, tell each other what's going on in our lives. And some of it is really funny and light. And some of it is this. And some of it is, I don't want to talk about this today because I can't quite wrap my head around it. And some of it is a cry for help, you know, like when this was happening and my parents lived in the Bay Area, And they were seeing New York and San Francisco have seen some of the highest rates of an increase in Asian violence in those communities. And, I'm thinking to myself, like, help me, what do I do? I don't know how to process this. So I think it's all of those things. And we bring that to the table every week. And then to answer your question, has it been a hindrance or an inspiration? I think it has been an inspiration in the sense that what you started off in talking about our show is that Kulap and I did not plan on diving into this. The world happened. Yeah. And then we made the choice to be really, really honest about it, to not hide behind something that felt safe and something that felt palatable to everybody. There are going to be parts of the show that feel really tough. But that's, there were days, during 2020 and the beginning of this year where getting out of bed was an accomplishment. And if I can't sit here in front of the microphone and be honest about that, then I really have, like, what's the point in this? Like, for me, as an exercise for this podcast, like there was no point in doing it unless I'm going to be fully honest. And I think that felt very vulnerable, and it does feel vulnerable. But it also feels like we are not wasting our time. Like, I'm not wasting this opportunity and this time and this show if I can't be honest with what's going on in our community. Like, yeah.
And Sue, correct me if I'm wrong. I want to say a year plus ago, mainstream media wasn't talking about the violence. Right. We were still trying to prove that it was happening. And a lot of what we're talking about was like, please follow Next Shark. Please follow, like your listeners who are not Asian American, maybe your algorithm isn't catching what is happening to our community. Please,
you have to
know that this
is
happening.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And it's not it's not in the news. It's not in the news.
No. In fact, in researching this, I'm seeing things. I'm like, I had no idea. I had no idea. Unless I deliberately went to find it, I would have never seen it.
Yeah.
And that's,
you need to do that. That needs to be on your feeds. Like, people talk about, well, how do we become allies? How do we support anything? How do we support any of these movements that need attention outside of our community? You can very simply follow. You can say very simply follow news channels that devote their entire content on talking about this.
Can you say what some of those channels are, if for those that are interested?
At Next Shark.
I'm going to go to our post too. Go ahead.
And we'll link it. Link it. Yeah.
NBC Asian America is a great resource. Following Asian American journalists like Lisa Ling.
That's right.
Very important.
Dion
go ahead,
Lim.
Dion Lim.
Stop AAPI Hate was one of the first organizations during the pandemic to start to really catalog and report these crimes. Because if you imagine for every crime that's reported, how many thousands and hundreds don't go reported, especially in a community that is underreporting everything, anyway. Like, you can imagine an elderly Asian American living in Chinatown who just wants to get by is not going to go to the police when someone spits in his face and, screams racial slurs. Like, that's just not what he's going to do. Right. So AAPI, Stop AAPI Hate. Kulap mentioned Next Shark. That's NEXT Shark. They, solely do the content on this. Asian Mental Health Collective and Asians for Mental Health have been two great resources, because as we deal with this long term and as we see that this is not going to end, that it doesn't have an end date, the mental health load on our community and the people that serve our community, I think is really important. It seems to be the next layer of conversation. And then AAPI Women Lead is a fantastic organization that focuses on women in the AAPI community. And Hate is a Virus is one that again launched during the pandemic, at first to deal with all of the businesses, the restaurants that were closing in these communities, and all of these restaurant workers and food industry folks, small mom and pops that were going out of business. But they quickly shifted into realizing that they were also having to support the violence. So they've been on the ground, and they've been able to pivot and really fund and help bring voice to this cause. And I really appreciate you even asking this question, because outside of our community, I don't ever talk about it. And I think it's equally as heartbreaking as heartbreaking to talk about it. And it's equally as heartbreaking that it is a complete silence in the other aspects of my life.
Well, I thank you for sharing it. Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things we've tried to do with this show is understand, we dug into the issue of polarization really hard and try to figure out, how did we get so divided as a country, and what is media's role in that?
Yeah.
And we brought in people from all sides of the political spectrum and got feedback. And one of the groups that I thought was fantastic was, if you've seen Ground News, ground.news. So what they do is they're trying to help, they have an email they'll send you called the Blind Spot Report. And it'll tell you, if you follow conservative outlets, here's some things that you're not being told that you need to know. And the same thing on the left. And they also cover worldwide news that we have no access to. Nobody's actually doing. But I think underrepresented stories and voices, there's so much that we just don't know because we're caught up in, Pete Davidson or whatever, right?
Yeah, right.
And we just don't pay attention to this stuff. It's not what's selling, so nobody pays attention to it. And we're not necessarily going out of our way for it. But as there are sources that can kind of use it as like an end cap at the grocery store, like I think that's the goal, right?
Yeah.
Or one goal about the issue of our own lack of awareness about what's going on in the world on all kinds of issues is the fact that if we can figure out how to get it to become something that we are exposed to organically without having to rely on human initiative every single time, and get that into your feed, whatever that feed is, that seems really, really important. So we are big proponents of this, and anything that helps illuminate perspectives that we're not going to get otherwise is very, very helpful. So I thank you for that. So I know we're basically out of time here, but a couple of closing questions. So you talked about it's never going to go away. But what is the hope that at least in your lifetime and our lifetime, we might be able to see on some of these topics? What is the next stage? What does the next stage of progress look like to you? And is Add to Cart playing a part in trying to bring that into being?
I mean, we're just a small little shopping podcast. I think that part of I think what has been happening, is in the Asian American community is that, for me at least, I know, and I've been doing this for 30 years now, it is a type of wake-up call that I never even knew I was asleep, meaning that I think that so much of our conditioning in this world is to not rock the boat, to stay on course. Wow, you're doing so well on paper. So what that there are these microaggressions happening at work? So what you keep passed over for, your jobs, and you know what I mean? Like there's this belief that if we just work hard enough, and if we're just, likable enough, that things will get better. And I think at least that has been my upbringing and my conditioning. And what I'm starting to realize is the power of social media and the power of this digital community is that we can, for the first time, share our stories, and that there is a space for them publicly, so that we can look at the pain, and that can be as much a part of our story as our success. I think that this sort of notion of, Asians and the model minority myth has kept us from really talking about the pain in our community. Like there has been violence, there has been racism, that all of this has been going on. from the beginning, but we've never really talked about it collectively until now. And in some ways, that is the silver lining to this. So I would say that the hope is that we get to talk about the pain just as much as we talk about the joy. I think, as I said before, for me, I always felt like I only had to concentrate on being happy and delivering the news in a way that was palatable, because anything else was just not acceptable. And so I think that is what's happening now. There are books coming out, there are channels, there are shows, there are documentaries, everything celebrating sort of who we are as a whole, the good and the bad. And for me, this is the first time I've seen such a whole version of an Asian person being told. And so from there, I don't know. From there, it's the moon and the stars. But I think that until we're able to share our stories, we can't move forward in creating change. That's my opinion about things.
And I think she mentions saying Asian and Asian American as this monolith, this huge umbrella term. And for me, true representation is when we get to diversify those stories. I'm Lao American. I'm a minority within a minority. When I am given pure, agency and support to tell my stories. That would be a leap forward. Another leap forward would be that we go beyond trauma and we can tell stories of joy. Where there can be a licorice pizza, but it's Asian people who grew up in Torrance, right? And minus that horrible Asian scene. And then, but when we can just be, and it's not about, it's such an interesting balance, right? I want to talk about the American war in Laos, the secret war in Laos, but that trauma, which is generational for me, is not the only thing about me. But if you're going to tell a story, I want to talk about my experience with it. But then I also want to talk about, like the things that make me happy. I can just be a person. And I do think it's revolutionary to be a woman in entertainment. It's revolutionary to be an Asian American woman in entertainment. It's revolutionary to be in your 40s, Asian American woman in entertainment. And as SuChin stands on the shoulders of Connie Chung, I have very sturdy shoulders, and a bunch of sisters can get on these.
Well, please.
Yeah. No, I was going to say I love how she's, I'm just eternally grateful for her friendship. That's all. Just in that moment. So I think so.
I believe you guys, by the way. I don't think you're just selling it right now. I think you guys mean this stuff.
No, we do. We do. Unfortunately, it's, we do. Every moment of the podcast. I mean, I'm tearing up now. It just is. It's so emotional because it's about as raw and honest as I'll ever be in my life.
Well, I hope you keep doing it. You've been very generous, and we've had some fun, but you also went to some heavy places, and I know that's not always, you probably get tired of talking about some of this stuff. So I thank you for, rehashing it with me here and, teaching me and hopefully teaching a few other people too. We will post those links, and we will be bringing this to more people in the advertising community, advertisers that want to do something that not only helps with their return on investment, but also makes a positive impact in the world around them. I think this is a great place to look that you've created. And I thank you for what brands can now add to their cart. So before we go, can we get shameless and just plug some stuff? How can people find you, follow you, support you? Anything you got?
Well, you can go to add to cart pod to follow us on Instagram. I'm at I am Kulap on Instagram.
And I am at SuChin on Instagram.
Well, thank you both so much for the time and your generosity. And let's continue the conversation.
Thanks, Dan.
Thank you. This show remains dedicated to advancing our mission of mobilizing marketers to advance truth and civility in journalism. We value clarity, truth, fairness, respect, de-escalation, and tolerance. And we invite you to connect with us at MediaRoundtable.com. And if you found this show helpful, and hopefully you found this episode helpful, and you're committed to our cause, please follow us on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you like to listen. It's always free. And if you're a marketer and you're looking to support to live out the principles that we're talking about here, you can get in touch with our agency, Oxford Road, by visiting oxfordroad.com and subscribing to our weekly newsletter, which is called The Influencer. Last, I want to give special thanks to Bianca, Kyle, Jennifer, Amy, and the team at Podcast One. And as always, influence responsibly.